Trying without commitment is motion without progress. You see, we live in a world that has learned to applaud the effort, regardless of the outcome. We've been conditioned to think that as long as we're trying, we're doing enough. But there's a flaw in that thinking. There's a danger in mistaking activity for achievement. You can try all day long and still be no closer to where you want to be, because without commitment, trying becomes a circular motion, a hamster wheel of good intentions that takes you absolutely nowhere. Let's consider the difference between movement and progress. Imagine someone paddling a boat in a circle. They're moving, the water is rippling, there's splashing, maybe even sweat on their brow. It looks like effort, but at the end of the day, they're in the same spot where they began. That's what trying without commitment looks like. It's energy spent without a destination reached. It's showing up without being fully present. It's working without a plan, or worse, with a plan that's never truly acted upon. Trying is often the safe place. It gives us an out. It allows us to say, well, I tried, and then step away from the responsibility of results. It softens the blow of failure, but it also weakens the potential of success. Because success doesn't come from trying once or twice. Success doesn't come from dipping your toes in the water. It comes from diving in. It comes from being all in. It comes from doing the uncomfortable thing even when no one is watching, even when there's no applause, even when you're tired and discouraged. Commitment is what transforms trying into results. It's what separates the talkers from the doers, the dreamers from the builders. Commitment says, I will keep going even when the feeling of wanting to fades. It says, I don't need motivation, I need mission. That's the shift. Commitment is fueled by a decision, not a mood. Trying often waits for inspiration. Commitment acts regardless of it. Let's look at people who get in shape. Many try. They join the gym in January, buy the shoes, the supplements, the water bottle, even the new clothes. And for a few weeks, maybe they go, but then the soreness kicks in. Life gets busy. The weather changes, and little by little, the effort fades. Why? Because they were trying, but they weren't committed. They didn't tie the effort to a deeper reason. They didn't anchor the goal to something they weren't willing to give up on. Trying is temporary, commitment is permanent. The same applies in business. People try to start something all the time. They take a course, build a website, create a logo. But when customers don't show up right away, when feedback is negative, or when competition gets tough, they stop. The moment resistance appears, their effort vanishes, because they were trying to build a business, not committed to building it. And here's the reality. Resistance is not a sign to stop. It's a sign that you've finally started moving in a real direction. But only those who are committed will see that. Trying is often romanticized. We love the idea of trying. It makes us feel noble, like we're on the journey. But trying without a finish line is self-deception. If you're not measuring your progress, if you're not holding yourself accountable, you're not progressing. You're just staying busy. Commitment, on the other hand, is sober. It's not glamorous. It's early mornings and late nights. It's saying no to what's easy in favor of what's necessary. It's repeating the same boring but essential habits daily, without fail. People say, I'm trying to be more productive. But trying doesn't block distractions. Trying doesn't schedule your day. Trying doesn't say no to the things that waste time. Commitment does. Commitment creates structure. It creates systems. It says, here's what I do every day, no matter what. Trying gives you an option. Commitment gives you a standard. Look at students who aim for top marks. The ones who try might open the book once in a while. They might pay attention when it's interesting, but the committed student studies every night. They rewrite notes. They ask questions. They prepare when no one else is. The difference in outcome is not because one is smarter. It's because one is committed. Trying hopes for a good grade. Commitment makes it inevitable. Trying gives you the illusion of progress. You feel like you're doing something because there's movement. You're reading books, watching videos, attending seminars. But none of that matters unless it leads to deliberate, consistent action. Reading without doing is intellectual entertainment, Planning without execution is self-sabotage in disguise. Commitment is what bridges the gap between learning and transformation. Even in relationships, trying isn't enough. You can try to be a better partner. You can try to be more patient, more communicative. But unless you commit to actually practicing those things, especially when it's hard, when your pride is bruised, when it's inconvenient, nothing changes. Trying says, I'll do my best when it's easy. Commitment says, I'll give my best even when it's hard. People often mistake trying for progress because trying looks like effort. But there's a critical difference between doing something and doing what needs to be done. Trying often lets us substitute the urgent for the important. We stay busy but avoid the hard work that actually leads to growth. Commitment prioritizes what matters most and makes it non-negotiable. Let's not forget that the world keeps moving whether you're trying or not. The market keeps evolving. Your competitors keep improving. Time keeps ticking. If you stay in the land of trying, you'll be passed by those who are committed. Those who didn't just try to get better, but made it their mission to improve daily. Commitment isn't loud. It doesn't always look exciting. It's not about fireworks and announcements. It's quiet, consistent, and powerful. Trying might get you applause at the beginning, but commitment gets you results in the end. This is the shift that must happen if you want to grow. Stop measuring your effort by how hard something feels, and start measuring it by how much it moves you forward. If you're not getting closer to your goal, if you're not improving, it doesn't matter how hard you're trying. What matters is whether your actions are producing results, and if they are not, it's time to stop trying and start committing. The marketplace rewards results, not effort. This is a truth many people avoid because it feels unfair. We grow up being told that as long as we try, as long as we put in the effort, we've done our part. But the real world doesn't operate on that principle. The real world, the business world, the world of achievement and success, doesn't care how hard you tried if there's no outcome to show for it. It only recognizes what works. It compensates outcomes, not attempts. Now, that doesn't mean effort has no value. Of course, effort is essential. You can't get to results without it. But the key point is that effort alone is not the currency. Results are, you don't get paid for trying to build a house. You get paid when the house is built. You don't earn respect for trying to meet a deadline. You earn it when the task is completed. Trying may win you sympathy, but results win you trust, respect, and opportunity. Look at any successful entrepreneur. They didn't become successful because they simply worked hard. They became successful because their hard work produced something, a product, a service, a solution. Something that others valued enough to pay for. The value they created was measurable. It solved a problem. It met a need. It changed someone's condition. That's the bottom line. The world trades in value, not in sweat. If you're running a business and you spend 10 hours designing your product, but nobody buys it, your effort doesn't matter to the customer. They're not going to say, well, I know it doesn't help me, but you did work hard on it, so here's my money. No. They'll go to someone else whose product works. In the marketplace, results are king. You either deliver or you don't. This principle applies not only to money, but to life. If you're in a leadership role, people don't follow you because you're trying hard. They follow you because your leadership makes a difference. If you're in sales, you're not compensated for the number of calls you make. You're compensated for the number of deals you close. Activity is important, but impact is what matters. Effort is internal. It's what you feel. Results are external. They're what others can see, experience, and measure. You may feel that you're working really hard, and maybe you are. But if your effort isn't translating into change, growth, or improvement, then the value is limited. You could be spinning your wheels. You could be focused on tasks that look important, but don't move the needle. That's why self-awareness and accountability are so crucial. You have to keep asking yourself, is this getting me closer to what I want? Is this creating value? Is this generating results? The people who thrive in any field are those who understand this. They don't confuse motion with meaning. They don't waste time congratulating themselves for being busy. They measure their effort by its effectiveness. They examine the output, the feedback, the numbers. They want to know if the work is working. If not, they adjust. That's the mindset that gets rewarded. Not just hustle, but intelligent, focused, adaptable action that leads somewhere meaningful. Let's take the example of fitness. Someone might say, "I've been going to the gym every day. I've been trying so hard." But trying isn't the goal, transformation is. If after 6 months there's no visible improvement in health, strength, or endurance, then the program or the approach needs to change. The body responds to results-driven effort. The scale doesn't care how hard you tried. It reflects what worked. In school, students often say, "I studied for hours and still didn't do well." But effort spent inefficiently doesn't guarantee success. The student who studies for 1 hour with complete focus and retention often outperforms the student who spends 5 hours half distracted. It's not about the time, it's about what's produced during that time. The grade is the result. The system rewards the output, not the number of hours spent hunched over a textbook. In the professional world, you could be working 60 hours a week, attending every meeting, replying to every email, and still be passed up for a promotion. Why? Because your employer isn't tracking how many emails you sent. They're tracking how much progress you drove, how many problems you solved, how much revenue you helped generate, how many customers you retained. It's about performance, not presence. Showing up is expected. Delivering value is what gets noticed. This is especially true in entrepreneurship, where there's no fixed paycheck. The market becomes your only boss. It doesn't care how many all-nighters you pulled. It wants to know what you created. Did you build something useful? Did it reach people? Did it solve a real need? That's why so many passionate entrepreneurs fail. Passion without execution is just enthusiasm. The market has no emotions. It rewards what works, and this principle applies to personal goals too. If your goal is to save money, but you tried, to budget and still overspent every month, you didn't succeed. Trying isn't saving. Results are saved money in the account. If your goal is to write a book, trying doesn't put pages on the table. Writing does. You could sit in front of your computer every day for 2 hours, feel exhausted at the end of it, and still not produce a single usable chapter. It's not the effort that counts. It's the word count. It's the progress. In relationships, too, this truth echoes. Telling someone "I'm trying to be better" is not the same as being better. Words don't change dynamics. Consistent behavior does. If you're constantly apologizing for the same behavior and saying you'll try to improve, but nothing actually changes, eventually those words lose meaning. Effort without visible change becomes empty. So why do people cling to effort? Because it's easier to control. Results are uncertain. They depend on skill, timing, quality, consistency. Effort feels more within reach. You can always try. You can always be busy. But results force you to confront whether your work is effective. They force you to reflect, to assess, to change. That's uncomfortable, but it's necessary, and this is where self-honesty comes in. You have to be willing to hold your own work up to the light and ask the hard questions. Not did I try hard, but did this move me forward? Not did I put in hours, but what came out of those hours? That's what separates the ones who plateau from the ones who grow. That's what draws the line between good intentions and great execution. The truth is, the world has always rewarded results. Farmers aren't applauded for planting seeds. They are judged by the harvest. Builders aren't remembered for the blueprint. They are remembered for the skyline. Artists aren't paid for inspiration. They're paid for creation. The process matters, but it's the product that earns the reward. And the good news is that results can be created. They're not mythical. They're just the outcome of aligned, focused, smart work, repeated consistently. When you adopt this mindset, everything shifts. You stop looking for pats on the back and start seeking progress. You stop chasing praise and start chasing outcomes. You stop measuring how you feel about your effort and start tracking what your effort is producing. That's how value is built. That's how you move from effort to impact. Discipline must replace mere intention. Intentions are everywhere. Everyone intends to do better, be better, achieve more. People intend to eat healthier, wake up earlier, save money, learn a new skill, fix their relationships, or finally start that project they've been thinking about for years. But intentions without discipline are like seeds never planted, full of potential, yet lifeless. The truth is, your life does not rise to the level of your intentions. It rises, or falls, to the level of your discipline. It's easy to say, I want to change. It's harder to wake up at 5 a.m. every morning to make that change a reality. It's easy to say, I'll start next week. But unless next week has a plan, a structure, a system of action, next week will look just like last week. That's what discipline does. It puts structure around desire. It brings order to chaos. It turns a wish into a pattern, a thought into a lifestyle. Discipline is doing what you said you'd do long after the feeling you had when you said it has disappeared. That's the key difference. Intentions are emotional. They're born in moments of inspiration. You watch a video, read a book, hear a quote, and suddenly you're fired up. You decide you're going to turn your life around. But then the next day shows up with its noise, distractions, and resistance. That spark fades. Discipline is what shows up when motivation doesn't. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It demands what you committed to. Most people confuse good intentions with progress. They assume that meaning well is the same as doing well. It's not. You can have the purest of intentions and still be stuck in the same place year after year. Because results don't respond to what you meant to do. They respond to what you actually did. Intention is the spark. Discipline is the engine. Without it, you're not going anywhere. Look around at the people you admire, the ones who are consistently in shape, consistently growing in their careers, consistently improving themselves. They are not fueled by endless motivation. They are driven by discipline. They don't wake up every day excited to stick to their routines. They just do it anyway. They've built habits that don't rely on how they feel in the moment. That's the power of discipline. It removes the need to negotiate with yourself. Intentions are comfortable. They allow you to dream without sacrifice. Discipline, on the other hand, requires discomfort. It's waking up early when you'd rather sleep. It's saying no when everyone else is saying yes. It's staying consistent when no one's watching, when there's no immediate reward, when the payoff is still months or years away. Discipline demands that you train your mind to do what is necessary, not just what is convenient. People often say, I don't have time, or I'm too tired, or I'm not ready. But the truth is, they're not disciplined. Everyone has the same 24 hours. It's not time that's lacking, it's structure. It's not energy that's missing, it's focus. It's not readiness that's the issue, it's consistency. Discipline fills that gap. It doesn't wait for ideal conditions. It creates them through action. Discipline builds character. When you do the hard thing repeatedly, something changes inside of you. You begin to trust yourself. You no longer rely on external validation because you've proven to yourself that you can follow through. That inner strength becomes unshakable. It carries over into every area of life. Your health, your work, your mindset, your relationships. When you become disciplined, you become dependable, both to yourself and others. Intentions are common. Discipline is rare. That's why results are rare. Everyone starts strong, but few finish well. It's not because they didn't want it. It's because they didn't persist. They didn't develop the habits that turn intention into reality. Discipline is the bridge between the life you imagine and the life you live. Without it, the gap never closes. Think about a writer who wants to finish a book. If they rely only on intention, they'll write when they feel inspired. But inspiration is fleeting. It might show up once a week or once a month. A disciplined writer, however, sets a time each day and writes, no matter what. The pages add up. The book gets finished, not because of extraordinary talent, but because of daily discipline. The same applies to every craft, every profession, every goal. The disciplined always outperform the merely inspired. Discipline gives you the edge in a distracted world. Everyone is pulled in 100 directions. Notifications, opinions, entertainment, demands. Intentions get drowned in noise. Discipline cuts through it. It helps you say, this is what I'm doing today, no matter what else is going on. It trains you to focus on what matters most. In a world addicted to urgency, discipline keeps you aligned with importance. It's important to understand that discipline is a skill. It's not something you're born with. It's something you build one day at a time, one decision at a time. You don't become disciplined overnight. You become disciplined by choosing structure over chaos, commitment over comfort, execution over excuse. You build it by saying no to what you want now for what you want most. Discipline simplifies life. When you know what your priorities are, when your day has a clear rhythm, when your actions are consistent, decision-making becomes easier. You don't waste energy on constant internal battles. Should I do this? Should I skip that? The answer becomes automatic. You follow the system. That system, built through discipline, becomes your path to freedom. Ironically, discipline, which feels restrictive at first, ends up creating the most freedom. Freedom from guilt, freedom from regret, freedom from inconsistency. It's also what creates momentum. The more disciplined you are, the more you build momentum, and momentum is powerful. It reduces resistance. It builds confidence. It makes the next disciplined action easier. That's why the first few days of building a new habit are the hardest. You're pushing a heavy boulder uphill, but eventually, discipline turns that uphill push into downhill acceleration. What once required force now flows naturally. Intentions fade under pressure. Discipline withstands it when life gets hard, and it will. Your intentions will crumble if they're not backed by a system of consistent action. Discipline is your insurance policy against quitting. It's what keeps you grounded when the storms come. It's the part of you that says, I'm not giving up just because it's difficult. And that makes all the difference. Discipline is not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. You don't need to get it right every time. You just need to keep showing up. Even on the days you fail, discipline says, I'm back at it tomorrow. It teaches resilience. It replaces shame with resolve, and over time, that consistency compounds into mastery. Everyone wants success, but not everyone wants the price that success demands. That price is discipline. It's waking up and doing the work even when there's no applause. It's making decisions that protect your goals instead of your comfort. It's being your own coach, your own accountability partner, your own motivator. Discipline is the great separator. It's what distinguishes those who live on purpose from those who drift. It's what creates results in a world full of good intentions. It's the engine that powers progress, the structure that sustains growth, and the key that unlocks potential. Where intention sets the direction, discipline drives the journey forward. Without it, even the best intentions fade into distant memory. Consistency beats occasional enthusiasm. It's easy to be excited at the beginning. The start of any journey feels fresh, energized, and full of potential. You make plans, you talk big, you imagine the finish line, you set goals with confidence, and you declare your intentions with pride. Enthusiasm is high, the vision is clear, and the passion burns. But then life sets in. The excitement fades, the distractions return, the daily grind begins, and that's where most people stop. Not because they didn't care, but because they were relying on enthusiasm instead of consistency. The truth is, anyone can show up once. Anyone can go to the gym for one hard workout. Anyone can post once with energy and passion. Anyone can wake up early one day and feel productive, but that one moment doesn't change your life. What changes your life is showing up again and again and again, even when it's not exciting, even when no one is watching, even when the mood is gone, because consistency builds what enthusiasm only imagines. The world doesn't reward your best days. It rewards your repeated actions. Your habits shape your results far more than your occasional bursts of effort. If you study one night before a test with full enthusiasm, but you've been inconsistent all semester, you'll fail. If you invest all your energy into 1 week of dieting, but return to your old habits after that, the weight comes right back. If you make a grand declaration about launching your business, but don't follow through with daily work, the idea dies. Enthusiasm makes promises, consistency keeps them. Consistency is quiet, it's unglamorous, it doesn't post highlight reels, it doesn't wait for the perfect time, it doesn't seek applause, it simply repeats what matters most over and over. And over time it builds something unshakable, a body of work, a life of discipline, a track record, a reputation, a foundation, because success is not found in occasional big moves. It's hidden in the small, repeated actions that stack up day by day. Enthusiasm says, let's start strong. Consistency says, let's keep going. And it's the second voice that gets you across the finish line. People love the idea of transformation. They love the dramatic before and after stories. But what they don't see is the unsexy middle, the day after day grind, the mundane, repetitive effort, the days when progress feels invisible and motivation is low. That's where consistency lives. That's where success is built. In every field, sports, business, art, health, the top performers aren't the ones who were just the most excited. They're the ones who kept showing up, who kept practicing, who kept writing, training, learning, building, refining. They didn't rely on bursts of energy. They built systems. They followed routines. They worked when they didn't feel like it, because they knew that consistency compounds. One of the greatest misunderstandings in personal growth is believing that massive action is the key to success. But massive action without consistency is wasted. A big push might start the engine, but without steady fuel, you're going nowhere. Imagine planting a seed and flooding it with water one day, then leaving it dry for weeks. It won't grow. Plants don't respond to sudden enthusiasm. They respond to consistent care. So do your goals. There's nothing wrong with enthusiasm. It's a great place to begin. It's the emotional spark that ignites the journey. But it cannot carry you. Emotion fades, life interrupts, problems show up. That's when consistency becomes more powerful than any emotional burst. It keeps you steady, it keeps you focused, it keeps you working the plan, even when the plan stops feeling magical. People often ask how to stay motivated. The answer is simple: you don't. Motivation comes and goes. What you need is discipline, and discipline grows from consistency. When you repeat the same key actions over time, even without motivation, something powerful happens. You build trust with yourself. You stop relying on feelings and start relying on systems. You no longer need to be pumped up. You just do what needs to be done. Look at writers who complete books. It's not because they were inspired every day. It's because they sat down and wrote a certain number of words every day, whether they felt like it or not. Musicians who master their instruments aren't practicing only when it's fun. They're practicing daily, often alone, often bored, but always improving. Fitness results don't come from one epic workout. They come from months of consistency. Careers aren't built on one viral moment. They're built on years of showing up, adding value, and evolving. Consistency also builds resilience. When you stick to something over time, you develop the mental toughness to push through plateaus. You learn to keep going even when progress is slow. You stop needing instant results and start trusting the process. That mindset is a game changer, because most people quit not because they lack ability, but because they can't stand the boredom of steady, incremental growth. They want fast, they want exciting, they want dramatic. But life doesn't work that way. Growth is a slow burn. Consistency is the great equalizer. You don't need to be the most talented, the smartest, or the most charismatic. If you are consistent, you will eventually outlast and outperform those who started stronger but couldn't stay the course. The tortoise wins not because he's faster, but because he never stops moving forward. In a world of sprinters, the marathoner always wins in the long run. Consistency creates identity. When you repeatedly do something, it becomes who you are. If you consistently show up at the gym, you become someone who takes care of their body. If you consistently save and invest, you become financially disciplined. If you consistently study or create or serve or lead, that repetition defines your self-image. You no longer have to force yourself. You simply act in alignment with who you've become. And that's the ultimate reward of consistency, not just the external results, but the internal transformation. You become dependable, you become focused, you become someone others trust, and someone you can trust yourself. Enthusiasm can't do that, only consistency can. The real test of a person's growth is not how loud they are when they're excited, but how steady they are when the emotion is gone. Can you keep moving forward when no one is watching? Can you do the right thing over and over, even when no one claps? That's the question consistency answers, and those who answer it daily are the ones who rise. They don't rise by accident. They rise by choice, by repetition, by commitment to the long game, because they understand that the small things, done consistently, create the big results that others admire. Transformation begins with decisive action. Every breakthrough in life starts with a decision. Not a vague wish, not a hopeful thought, but a clear, firm decision followed by immediate, deliberate action. Without that, transformation remains an idea, a fantasy, a plan written in a notebook, a vision trapped in the mind. Action is what turns possibility into reality. It's the ignition that starts the engine of change. You can talk about goals, you can journal about dreams, but nothing shifts until you move. The road to transformation doesn't start with more thinking. It starts with doing decisive action. Means you've crossed a line in your mind. You're not dabbling, you're not testing the waters, you're not waiting for signs, you're stepping forward with intention, even if the path ahead is unclear. It's not recklessness, it's courage. Courage to begin even before you feel fully ready. Courage to let go of perfect conditions. Courage to say, this is the moment, and then act on it. Because the truth is, nothing changes until something moves. The reason so many people stay stuck is not because they lack talent, intelligence, or even opportunity. It's because they stay in preparation mode forever. They analyze, overthink, plan, delay, and convince themselves they need just a little more time. But transformation doesn't wait for your comfort. It responds to commitment. And commitment is proven not in words, but in action. Action cuts through hesitation. Action shatters fear. Action sends a signal to your mind and to the world that your serious waiting feels safe. Planning feels responsible, but waiting without action is just avoidance dressed up as caution. It's easier to plan for change than to change. It's easier to talk about potential than to step into it. But every real transformation, physical, mental, emotional, financial, requires a moment where you stop talking and start moving. You decide, you take the first step. You build momentum not by thinking harder, but by acting faster. Decisive action creates clarity. People often think they need clarity before they act, but that's backward. Clarity often comes from movement. When you begin, even in uncertainty, things start to make sense. You gather feedback. You gain experience. You start to see what works and what doesn't. Every step forward reveals something new. You can't figure it all out in your head. You learn faster by doing. The most powerful decisions are the ones that lead to action, because those decisions turn thought into transformation in health. The person who transforms their body doesn't wait for the perfect workout plan. They don't wait to feel motivated every morning. They make the decision to act, to get up, to move, to eat better, to track progress. It starts with a walk, a meal, a workout, and that simple act, repeated with consistency, becomes the foundation of transformation. One workout doesn't make a fit person, but the decision to work out today instead of someday, that's the pivot point. That's the beginning of the change in business. The person who transforms their financial future doesn't spend years studying without applying. They don't wait until they have every piece in place. They take action with what they have. They make the call, launch the idea, test the product, write the first line. That step might be imperfect, but it's forward motion. And motion leads to momentum. Every success story is a chain reaction that started with one bold move. Decisive action also builds confidence. Confidence doesn't come from theory, it comes from experience. The moment you act, you shift from wondering to knowing. You prove to yourself that you can begin. You teach yourself that fear can be felt but not followed. You train your mind to respect your own word. That internal shift is what transformation is really made of. Not a sudden change in circumstances, but a change in identity. The decision to act and to keep acting rewires how you see yourself. You stop seeing yourself as someone who wants to change and start seeing yourself as someone who is changing. There's power in momentum. One small action can knock down the next domino. You clean one room and suddenly you feel like tackling the next. You write one page and suddenly the book doesn't feel so overwhelming. You have one honest conversation, and suddenly your relationship starts to improve. You start saving a little, and suddenly your mindset about money begins to shift. But none of that happens if you don't take the first action. That first act is the key that unlocks transformation. Most people don't need more time. They need more urgency. They're waiting for the right mood, the right moment, the right message. But transformation isn't about perfect timing. It's about making time count. It's about acting now, not later, because later turns into never. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes next year. And dreams decay in that delay. A decisive person understands that hesitation has a cost. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes to start. The longer you think about it, the more doubt creeps in. But when you act quickly, you cut through the noise, you shut down the internal debate. You silence the fear long enough to build a rhythm. Decisive action is not about big, dramatic moves. It's about meaningful, immediate steps. Start the project, make the call, sign up for the class, cancel the distraction, wake up an hour earlier, do something that shifts your direction. Don't aim for perfect, aim for progress. Don't wait for all the answers. Start with what you know and improve along the way. The path becomes clearer as you walk it. Transformation favors the mover, not the dreamer. There's a reason the people who change their lives often describe a defining moment, a decision point where everything shifted. That shift wasn't magical, it was made real by action. They decided to stop settling, they decided to raise their standards, they decided to finally do the thing they had been talking about. That moment of decision, followed by action, is where the old version of you begins to die and the new one starts to emerge. You don't need a complete plan to become better. You just need to do the next right thing. Right now, waiting feels rational. It feels responsible, but at some point, waiting becomes a trap. You keep telling yourself you're getting ready. You keep planning to begin, but days pass, then weeks, then months, and the gap between who you are and who you want to be grows wider. The only way to close that gap is to act, to step into the discomfort, to risk doing it poorly at first, because doing it poorly is still doing it, and doing leads to learning, learning leads to growth. Growth leads to transformation, but none of that starts without that first move. You don't drift into transformation, you drive into it. You take the wheel, you point yourself toward change and hit the gas. It doesn't matter if the road is bumpy or if you stall a few times. What matters is that you're moving. Movement is the seed of momentum, and momentum, once built, becomes a force that's hard to stop. The most important moment in any transformation story is the moment the person said, "Enough," and backed it up with action, not talk, not promises, just action. Real, visible, courageous movement in the direction of better. That moment changes everything because it proves that change is possible, not because of luck, not because of chance, but because of choice, and choice means power, and power begins the moment you act. Success demands mastery, not attempts in a world full of noise. Trying is common, but mastery is rare. Everyone is attempting something. People attempt to eat healthier, to start a business, to be more productive, to learn a skill. But success doesn't yield to those who dabble. It doesn't respond to short-term enthusiasm or casual interest. Success bows only to mastery, the level of commitment, precision, and repetition that transforms a beginner into a force of excellence. You don't stumble into success by trying once in a while. You arrive at it by becoming a master of your craft. Your habits, your mindset, and your mission attempts are temporary. They are scattered. They lack the depth required to generate meaningful, lasting outcome. Attempts are like planting seeds and forgetting to water them. You might get lucky, but you won't get consistent harvests. Mastery, on the other hand, is deliberate. It's focused. It requires patience and discipline. It means doing the work over and over until the process becomes part of who you are, until you can no longer be separated from the excellence you produce. Success doesn't reward the person who tried something 10 times. It rewards the one who did it 10,000 times and got better every time they did it. Repetition with intention breeds expertise. It builds trust. It creates a reputation. The person who keeps showing up, refining, learning, improving, that person earns success not because they're lucky, but because they've built something unshakable, something so strong that the world takes notice. Mastery can't be faked. It can't be copied. It can't be imitated. It must be earned. Look at the best in any field: athletes, artists, leaders, performers. They didn't achieve their status by attempting their craft once in a while when it felt convenient. They poured themselves into it. They studied, practiced, failed, and improved. They learned from feedback, sought guidance, paid attention to detail. They weren't aiming for average. They were aiming for mastery. And mastery makes you undeniable. It silences doubt not with words, but with results. Attempting gives you a way out. It's a soft entry with an easy exit. You can always say, "At least I tried," but trying doesn't hold you accountable. It doesn't demand growth. It allows excuses to hide in the background. Mastery does the opposite. It exposes your flaws and forces you to fix them. It requires that you level up every aspect of yourself to meet the standard of excellence. It's not about perfection. It's about relentless improvement. It's not about doing it once. It's about doing it right, again and again. The danger of living in a culture that celebrates trying is that effort starts to be mistaken for progress. You can try to start a business by watching videos, attending webinars, and posting on social media. But unless you're building something real, solving real problems, and consistently evolving, you're still in the realm of attempts. Business success demands mastery in leadership, in communication, in customer understanding, in execution. You don't get that by dipping your toe in the water. You get that by jumping in and refusing to come out until you've learned how to swim at an elite level, even in personal development. Mastery is the dividing line. You don't build confidence by reading about it. You build it by living in a way that reinforces it, by consistently doing hard things, by keeping promises to yourself, by sharpening your skills and proving your worth through action. Attempting to be confident and mastering your mind are two different things. One is hopeful, the other is intentional. One is fragile, the other is unbreakable. Relationships are no different. Trying to be a better partner occasionally won't heal or strengthen anything. Mastery in relationships means understanding, patience, communication, and consistency. It means showing up daily with love, accountability, and growth. Not once in a while, every day. That's the difference between connection and distance. between lasting bonds and broken ones. Success in relationships, like everything else, demands mastery. When you adopt the mindset of mastery, everything changes. You stop looking for shortcuts. You stop chasing instant gratification. You start investing in depth instead of speed. You realize that real success is not rushed. It's earned over time, through repetition, through feedback, through resilience. Mastery requires that you outlast the learning curve, that you stay in the game longer than others, that you become so good they can't ignore you. Mastery gives you clarity. It helps you strip away distractions. You stop trying to do everything and start focusing on doing the important things exceptionally well. You become selective, precise, disciplined. You don't follow trends. You build principles. You don't get swayed by noise. You trust your process. You don't seek approval. You earn respect. That's the kind of clarity that makes progress inevitable. The most dangerous place to be is halfway committed. You're doing just enough to feel busy, but not enough to get real results. You're stuck between interest and obsession, between playing around and going all in. That middle ground is where dreams go to die. Because success doesn't show up halfway. It shows up when you cross the line and decide, once and for all, that this is what you do, who you are, and how you live. Attempting feels safe. It keeps your identity separate from the outcome. If it doesn't work, you can detach. You didn't fail. You just tried. But mastery forces integration. You put your name on the work. You put your heart into the process. You raise the stakes, and because of that, you grow faster. You evolve deeper. You sharpen your edge. The pain of failure in the pursuit of mastery is what forges true success. It's what builds legacy. You don't need to be the most talented. You don't need to have the best start. You need to practice, commit, and outlast the competition. You need to master your routines, your environment, your habits, your craft. That's how you dominate your field, not by wishing, but by working. Not by trying, but by training. Not by aiming to participate, but by preparing to win. Mastery is repetition with reflection. It's not just doing the same thing over and over. It's improving every time. It's studying what worked, what didn't, and making adjustments. It's keeping records, tracking progress, seeking out critique. It's a never-ending game of optimization. The difference between amateurs and masters is that amateurs repeat, but masters refine. They squeeze the lesson out of every experience. They are obsessed with growth. Success will never belong to those who simply show up once in a while. It belongs to those who become obsessed with mastery, who work in silence while others seek attention, who choose discipline over distraction, who value depth over speed, who are willing to be misunderstood while they improve in the shadows. Success is not a reward for the casual. It's the crown worn by the committed, not the ones who tried, the ones who trained, not the ones who hoped, the ones who prepared, not the ones who dabbled, the ones who mastered.